Yeah, thanks for coming on our podcast, guys. It's kind of like if we're playing a game of pickup basketball and Steph Curry stopped by.
I don't understand that reference.
Yeah.
Neither does Alex.
It's like we're bullseyeing a Womp Rat and Luke Skywalker stops by.
Totally.
Indiana Jones, Indiana Jones, Indiana. It's a podcast about Indiana Jones. Every movie, 1 minute at a time. Indiana Jones, Indiana Jones Minute.
Welcome back to the Indiana Jones Minute, the podcast in which we celebrate and discuss the film Raiders of the Lost Ark 1 minute at a time. I'm Tom Taylor.
I'm Pete Mummert.
I'm Gerald Christopher Marcus Porter.
I need to come up with a cool Indiana Jones related confirmation name. I think mine was super boring. But joining us again today, back for their third episode, are our friends from the Star Wars Minute who inspired this whole thing. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Alex Robinson here.
And I'm Long Island, the retailer. Is that Indiana Jones inspired?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Tri-County Taylor. I don't know. But minute 18 is what we're here to discuss. Minute 18 begins with Indy explaining that Tanis is a possible resting place of the Lost Ark, and it ends with Eaton, Red 6, not seeming to buy the idea of a secret chamber. I mean, yeah, that's like the height of his, he's just sitting there with his face in his hand, like, yeah, secret chamber. Right. Okay. Tell me more. Yeah. So glad I came all the way on the Excel for this.
Well, this is as close as we get to, I always appreciate when they say the name of the movie in the movie. And depending on the crowd, sometimes I'll applaud.
Yeah. Or just hear a small ding.
Right. So here they say, Lost Ark. The Lost Ark, I think. So we're so close.
Well, he says it and then Musgrove repeats it. The Lost Ark.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that reminds me of the question I never really thought of until this minute. I mean, the minute that we're watching, not this minute that I'm talking, is who are the titular raiders? Are the Nazis the raiders?
We were sort of asking that at the very beginning. In our first minute, we sort of touched it, what does the title actually mean? Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I think we got distracted. But we can figure it out now.
Well, I think the more we've watched, when I think of a raider, I think of a pirate. And the more I've seen of this movie, the more I think of Indiana Jones.
Because he's a space pirate in real life.
He's a space pirate, and he's a grave-robbing pirate, apparently, as well.
Yeah, I think everybody in the movie is a raider of the Lost Ark, basically, except for Marcus because he stays home. Although he green lights it, so he's implicit.
They're clearly talking about Shishak. When because
he turned him on to Shishak.
Yeah, they're talking about Shishak, who is actually the original raider of the Ark. Wasn't even lost.
It wasn't even lost yet.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, he's so old, OG that it's not even lost yet.
his movie was called Loser of the Rated Ark.
Yeah.
Dude, I lost my Ark.
Yeah, dude, where's my Ark?
Yeah.
my Ark. Well, Pete, I had a question, and Pete, maybe you're sort of the resident biblical scholar and bow tie suit wearing guy. So according to the Bible, so God's mad at the Hebrews for not really, not doing what they're supposed to. So he sends Shishak to open a can of whoop ass on them and say, they steal or raid. I'll say they raid the Temple of Solomon, and then they take the Ark back. Yeah, they take the Ark back to Tanis, his old neighborhood or whatever, and then you have a sandstorm that lasts a year, and it wipes out Tanis and Shishak or whatever, which led me to conclude God's kind of double dipping on this. He's double punishing. He's punishing the Hebrews for not doing all the proper Moses laws and all that. And then he's also like, but you can't take the ark, Shisak.
Well, it is the Old Testament. That sounds exactly on par.
It's like in the story, everybody's punished, and that's it.
Well, it makes sense to me because it's sort of like, imagine if your kid did something bad and you're like, you know what? Because you're being bad, you're not taking care of your bicycle. And then your next door neighbor comes over and goes, well, I'm going to take the bicycle. You don't then say, well, there you go. See, you lost your bicycle. You say, well, no, you're not taking this bicycle. It's my kid's bicycle. Yeah. So, and yes, it is the Old Testament God who was very testy.
Yeah, you're getting a year-long sandstorm.
Right.
Which, by the way, I looked up the longest. Do you know, Pete? You probably know this. The longest sandstorm ever, or the biggest one, was that it actually wasn't around Jerusalem. It was in 1935, April 14th, Black Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah, around like Oklahoma.
Kansas, yeah.
Yeah, so it makes me wonder what was lost then.
Wow.
Paul's piano?
In like 1,000 years, they're going to be like, oh, in 1935.
I have to say, though, this movie made me want to become an archaeologist. But watching this movie 1 minute at a time, this 1 minute, minute 18, may have more bad archaeology than any other movie ever made.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like as you're listening to Marcus's story and he's going through the history of like where the ark went and everything, I feel like I know where the script starts making stuff up, like where there was history and then they kind of like extrapolate from it because he starts saying like, well, he may have taken it and put it in a secret chamber that nobody knew about.
Right.
But then you're making it sound now like maybe more of that is actual historical possible fact.
Well, I think my first red flag is that the professor of archaeology, Dr. Jones, calls Mount Horeb Mount Hareb.
Oh, that drove. Okay, I was in CCD when I'm watching this movie. I'm watching it in CCD, but like in Sunday school, and I'm like, wait a minute. I know everybody knows this story. It was Mount Sinai. What are you talking about? How is Indiana Jones so bad at this? And then he starts chasing people and whipping things. I'm like, all right, he's okay. But no, that drove me nuts. So wait, yeah. So what's the story with that?
Well, Tanis is never really a lost city.
I'm asking about Mount Horeb.
Mount Horeb.
What is it?
Mount Horeb.
Oh, Horeb. Okay.
Yeah. Horeb.
Is that the same thing?
It is the same thing, but
okay.
Pete was just being polite. He didn't want to call you out on the show.
I'm sorry.
It's been a long-running debate in archaeological circles whether Mount Sinai and Mount Horeb are supposed to be the same mountain because they're both mentioned in the Old Testament as places where the Ten Commandments were passed down.
Oh, weird.
And if you follow biblical archaeology, which I'm assuming many of our listeners do, if you follow the documentary hypothesis, this would be Exhibit A in our movie about the documentary hypothesis. Mount Horeb versus Mount Sinai.
Oh, okay.
Which it's two separate names based on two separate writers for possibly the same mountain.
Like people who lived on one side of it called it Mount Horeb, and people who lived on the other side called it Mount Sinai.
That's what people are saying, actually.
That's my favorite Dr. Seuss book, by the way.
And in the end, they realized we're all talking about the same thing.
See?
Bartholomew and the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, just like Red 6, I was lousy at Sunday school, so I didn't even get all this Horeb Sinai stuff.
As a kid whose dad was a pastor and made him go to Sunday school every Sunday for his life, I think that may be my favorite, at the time, was my favorite line in any of these. Didn't you guys ever go to Sunday school?
And you stood up, you're like, woo!
And then Eaton's reaction to that is awesome.
He just looks so angry.
He's like, I'll have you know I was in the top of my class in Sunday school.
I think he was.
I thought who you're talking to?
I think he was just disappointed that Indiana Jones didn't then produce a Sunday.
Did someone say Sunday? When I hear Sunday, I expect to have a Sunday produced.
I go through and do all these kind of, Homer Simpson type thought bubbles of everything in this conversation, but you see what's going on in Eaton's head, and it's always just...
You went to school to make Sundays?
That's incredible. He's picturing like an ark filled with ice cream, at some diner where they do that. See if you can eat the whole ark.
So Indiana Jones also says, if you believe that sort of thing when he's talking about Moses and all that.
Uh-huh.
So is that sort of like Indy? Is that a hint as to? Do we know what Indy's religious? Is he kind of just like a? Do we know what his deal is? What his beliefs are? Because he seems kind of skeptical about this whole ark thing in terms of it being. But
it's weird because he's like that throughout all the movies, but it's almost like Agent Scully or something. It's like, how much do you have to see where you got to be a little less skeptical after a while? Like you see Nazis melted. Well, you didn't see it. I guess he had his eyes closed. Maybe that's the problem.
Right. Well, he hasn't
Plausible
seen it
His
yet.
eyes more often.
Yeah.
Last thing he saw was the power of Shiva. So maybe he's currently going through a Hindu phase because he's like, no, I saw it work. I'm totally into it, man. If you believe that kind of, all this Bible stuff, it's, dude, I saw the rock glow.
I saw a guy pull a heart out of a man's chest,
Yeah.
and the guy eat a monkey.
Their medical science is decades ahead of us.
Well, I think as we were talking about earlier, that shows you Marcus is a little, he's a good foil for Indy's sort of disbelieving self.
Yeah.
Marcus is, he's you can tell he's kind of got a foot in, hey, we might be biting off more than we can chew.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And of course, this mimics Han Solo's own skepticism about his galaxy's religion. So,
Right.
That's right.
Oh, this is evidence piece number 10.
It's a cool kind of story-wise, it's screenwriting-wise. It's a cool. I'm not going to call it a trick, but it's
gimmick.
a good use of a tool to have basically characters who are here to be given exposition.
Yeah.
Like, we're bringing us all up to speed by having people show up and be like, we need to find this thing. What's this all about? Just like it can be done really poorly, but this just seems so kind of, it's a very smooth kind of subtle thing that it all the dialogue seems dynamic and organic rather.
Yeah, and the situation is sort of inherently interesting. Like, oh, the government is here all of a sudden, like asking me about, desert digs and Tanis, and you get a little caught up in his and Marcus's excitement over Tanis being found and stuff. So yeah, it's all very it's natural, and even though it's just a big long conversation, it's also exciting at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
there's
it's laying
some-
out kind of what's going to happen, and later we'll see a lot of these things. So it's a cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a great this whole scene is really a great example of sort of really explaining like why they're hunting for this MacGuffin, what's going to happen when they find it. It's really a good kind of seamless way. It kind of reminds me of in the movie Titanic, where basically at the beginning of the movie they tell you, okay, this is what's going to happen. The boat's going to tip over, it's going to split.
Yeah.
And do you think the fact that we like these talky scenes is a sign that we are getting old?
Yeah.
Because certainly when I was a kid, I wasn't like, what my favorite scene was when Porkins was lecturing that guy about it.
Well, I think that's a testament to how well the scene's done, is because this even as a kid, I liked this scene because there's sort of an ominous, foreboding quality to it that still keeps you engaged, even though they're just a bunch of suits talking, and it's not Indy with his bullwhip and all that stuff. It's still, you're like, oh my gosh, look at that big book, and it's the Wrath of God and Tanis. I don't know where that is.
Look at that big book. Wow.
I didn't know they made them that big. That book has buckles on it.
Forget it, I'm old.
And these are very
movie
quiet
has
minutes
everything.
too. There's no music until I think minute 20 until we actually see the arc.
Yeah, it's
That's
the
true.
greatest
Yeah.
music ever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, the music is what it sounds like when you go to heaven.
Yeah, you
Let's
you
save-
say this might be Harrison Ford's best performance. It might be, well, this is totally debatable, but it might be John Williams' best performance too, maybe.
I was just going to ask, how do you rank? I mean, the Star Wars music is they're both so iconic that
Right.
you can't really judge between them. They're just so.
Yeah,
Maybe Raiders seems a little more special because it doesn't have even though it's got 3 or 4 sequels, depending how you count, it doesn't. Most of the themes aren't repeated throughout, but where they are a lot in Star Wars, like the characters' themes are repeated a lot, and the Imperial March and stuff like that. So maybe this soundtrack feels a little more special. Maybe.
To me, it seems a little more tailored to the characters and the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we had that sort of South American pompous mischief music. And in this, if we're not at that minute yet, but trying to write, come up with music for, now imagine the guy opens the Bible
And also there are parts of most Star Wars movies, maybe just most other John Williams scores, where I hear hints of Raiders, but I don't know if I hear as many hints of other movies in Raiders.
it was a fun a game that we used to kind of I'll call it a game, that's being generous, but a nerdy thing that we used to do when I worked at the comic store is somebody would be kind of walking around, and if they're humming kind of let's say the Indy and Marion, the kind of love theme from this movie, then it's really easy to switch them into the Han and Leia music. Or
oh my god, I did that as a kid.
Yeah.
I remember being in my backyard thinking you could go from Close Encounters to Superman to Star Wars really easily if you just know what to. Yeah.
yeah,
I had no friends.
into Superman, like the Can You Read My Mind, into Han and Leia, into it all blends easily, which is it's all good, and it's all it's not the same thing over and over again, but it's interestingly it's John Williams certainly has a language.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Raiders turns into the NBC Nightly News theme, which turns into the Olympics.
Sounds like you got yourselves a medley.
I think most of the women characters from Star Wars and Raiders, the first 2 notes I think are almost exactly the same for each one of them. And it can go into Marion's theme, or it can go into Leia's from Star Wars, or it could go into Han and Leia's love theme from Empire.
Yeah, or
there you go.
it could
Music
go
theory.
Into what's one of the movie theater chains, right? Has that enjoy the show music. It's like
Oh yeah.
Now I can't think of it, but it's definitely one of them. We now present our feature presentation.
Yeah.
Oh, they're showing Raiders? That's awesome.
I wonder if you could take a bunch of John Williams's most striking, I probably wouldn't even be that hard to do, put them into a computer and blend them into the ideal generic, the platonic John Williams score.
From your mouth to the internet's ears.
Yeah.
Someone's working on that right now, I'm sure.
Doesn't Pete the Retailer end up having to do all these things when he lists them on Star Wars minutes?
Or our listeners certainly don't. We must throw out 20 ideas a show, and very few of them seem to come to light.
We're a bunch of slackers. We're just in it for the stickers.
Come on, guys. It's give and take. It's give and take.
All right, I'll get to work.
Thank you. So you sort of touched on this, Alex, about rankings and stuff. How would you are obviously Star Wars fanatics, that's safe to say. So where would you, well, okay, let's just deal with Raiders for now, but where would Raiders fit in, if you had to fit that in somewhere with your ranking of Star Wars movies, where do you think that would fit?
Well, first of all, the very notion is
bizarre.
No, it's repugnant. Not repugnant, but it's apples and oranges at the very least. But that being said, I would definitely put it in the top 3.
Okay.
I don't know if I can. I really can't. I really love this movie, so
yeah.
But I also obviously really love Star Wars, so I can't. I think Raiders is probably a better movie than any of the Star Wars movies because I think you can. I feel like you could show Raiders to an adult for the first time and they would get into it, whereas Star Wars, I feel like, is basically a kids movie. Yeah. So
I feel like I agree with you.
I mean, and I guess for some reason I consider that to be a superior film, but it just, I'm sure a kid would disagree with me. So, right. But that's just my, So yeah, I would definitely. I guess I would put it top. Go for
Okay.
you talk me into it.
Wow.
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 So much for the Star Wars minute. Oh well.
Star
I
Wars.
broke it.
But
But no, I kind of agree. It's I feel like Raiders has more in common with like other non-genre movies from the 70s or something. Like it almost feels like you could cut to, I don't know, Network or All the President's Men or something, almost within the same movie, and it would kind of make sense in a way or something.
It definitely has a different feeling than franchise movies do today, which definitely
yeah.
seem like they're kind of dumbed down and aimed
Yeah.
at, like, 13-year-old boys. And this certainly has its share of stuff that 13-year-old boys would like, but
Mhm.
I don't know, it just has a more kind of like mature quality. It's a kind of
Yeah.
more mature adolescent film.
Yeah, I've been wrestling with that since I saw it. Like exactly what makes it so much better than other movies of its ilk.
Yeah.
Well, we just said it's maybe John Williams at his best, and it maybe Harrison Ford at his best. And when you get him, I'm not knocking Grand Moff Tarkin or the incredible acting of Peter Cushing, but the scenes might be a little bit better done. I mean, and we're noticing that as we watch it 1 minute at a time.
Yeah, there's a different kind of authenticity to this movie than from a lot of like blockbustery kind of things. And I don't, it feels hard to say that as you're comparing it to Star Wars, because Star Wars has that too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. There's
Well, Pete, yeah. What do you? We haven't let you speak yet.
it has, it certainly benefits from being the first movie in a series can always has a certain amount of charm to it because it's introducing all these things.
Yeah.
So that, Star Wars can kind of stand alone and Raiders can kind of stand alone because they were made with just, they were kind of passion projects for these. Oh, I had this cool idea for a story versus like, oh, we have to make another one of these.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which begs the question: which of the franchises has had a larger fall from grace?
Well, I think I can tell which fell from grace faster.
Well, yeah, yeah. One was
in one movie as
it's
opposed
like
to
a vertical nosedive.
Isn't Steven Spielberg at his peak?
we were kind of kicking that around earlier too, and I forget where I mean, I was ready to say yes, this is Spielberg's best movie, and I was like, oh wait, this guy made Jaws, didn't he?
He made
Because Jaws is kind of
1941.
perfect.
Yeah.
It's another. I don't think I've seen 1941 all the way through. Is that okay? Is everyone all right with that? I'm not going to be kicked out of the club. But yeah, I mean, this could easily be Spielberg's best movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
My point when I would. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's each of these guys has kind of a it's a curve, so it's within their peak. When you get Empire, Raiders, Blade Runner for Harrison Ford is all in this kind of like swirl of a basically like what is that? Less than 2 years that he made all of that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
basically.
And you get John Williams between. Granted, Star Wars is the more famous one, but I think he really kind of developed and Empire kind of introduced some new themes and so between Empire, Raiders, Superman, all that John Williams stuff, that's within like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
You got
And then-
Valentino, Star Wars, and this for William Hootkins.
Yeah.
It's the perfect storm of talent. Yeah, my point about when I was making the case for this being Spielberg's best movie, I was saying that he, like every other, like Jaws and this are the only ones that I can remember, never fall back on any kind of sentiment, like any kind of like Spielbergian look of wonder, touching the kid's heart inside you sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like it's just, it's a little cooler than that. I mean, that can work in a lot of movies. It works in Close Encounters and works in E.T. and stuff, but there's none of that in Jaws or Raiders. And that, in my jaded point of view, that that makes it very cool.
Well, as you've said before, Tom, I think, in these movies they take it more seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, by the time we got like Short Round and the other, and the Temple of Doom, it's just like the movie doesn't have the ominousness of a scene like this, where it's just taken more seriously. Same with Jaws, obviously.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like this is the last of the blockbusters that wasn't a response to blockbusters. Like around after this, they were kind of like, oh, so this is what a summer blockbuster is like. We've had Star Wars a couple times, we've had Raiders and Superman, and it seems like even like Temple of Doom was kind of like responding to blockbusters in a way.
Interesting.
It was getting a little formulaic, maybe.
Right.
This is going in my thesis as well. Well, all right. If anybody else, no one else has anything, we can wrap this up for today and come back tomorrow and see what else happens and what exactly is a headpiece to the staff of Raw. Pete, why don't you tell us where everybody can get in touch with us?
Well, thanks for listening. If you like the show, you can subscribe via iTunes. You can find us at IndianaJonesAminute.com. You can find us on Facebook. And you can find our friends Pete and Alex on Facebook and at StarWarsMinute.com. And they have an absolutely fantastic podcast, which we're assuming you've already heard.
Yeah, I can't tell how many people already know all about Star Wars Minute Podcast just from being on the show. Or they have no idea. Now they're ditching this show to listen to your show. But if you're still around, please come back tomorrow. And we'll find out what happens next in Raiders of the Lost Ark on the Indiana Jones Minute.
Whoosh.
Indiana Jones Minute.
The Indiana Jones Minute.